Hello, everyone. My name is Clem Washington Flowers, and I'm with Team BREPA. And today I'll be presenting on continuous quality improvement, forming a diverse, equitable, and inclusive CQI team. To recap from the introductory presentation by Walter, we explained that continuous quality improvement, or CQI, is a cycle of identifying program-specific issues, gathering reusable information, and using this information to control improvement areas within a program. We also discussed the 2024 CQI initiative, which is a continuation from the success of the 2023 CQI initiative, where you will develop smaller CQI projects and go through the process with our team assisting. Today's goals for this presentation on forming a diverse, equitable, and inclusive CQI team are to learn key considerations to readying and forming your CQI team, obtain some diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, promotion strategies and guiding principles in your work, understand the roles team members can play, and recognize the importance of a subject matter expert in your process. The CQI process is broken down into 4 main steps. Form a CQI team, identify an improvement area, plan, do, study, act, and lessons learned. Today, I'll be walking through the first step, forming a CQI team. Key considerations to forming a CQI team. When you're thinking about forming your CQI team, you might consider who will lead the CQI initiative. It could be yourself, or maybe someone else will take the reins. How often will team members need to meet? This might change based on your goal or topic timeline. What are the expectations for participants? Will they need to attend all meetings, for example, or do work outside the meetings? How will information be disseminated? This could be referring to your notes from each meeting and also the results of your project at the end. What strengths do you want to see in the team you will assemble? Let's say you're not as strong in data analysis. Maybe you'll want to recruit a team member who's stronger in data analysis. And finally, what critical expertise or perspectives do you want to add to your team? And how will you do that? DEI considerations. The Casey Foundation published a report in 2022 on racial equity and CQI, and this report is a great supplemental tool to your CQI efforts, along with helpful principles and strategies to including a subject matter expert and the community into your project. It proposes action steps to answer some of the questions you might have on how to incorporate DEI throughout the process. We'll be attaching this resource with the presentation if you're interested in reading further. If you see the visual below, they proposed 8 guiding principles to promote equitable strategies, and I'll be walking through them in the next few slides. Principle 1 is to identify specific strategies and oversight. Research, evaluation, and CQI efforts play an important role in advancing equity. These activities warrant specific strategies and oversight. In Principle 1, your oversight could be thinking about who's in the leadership roles and how you implement inclusive strategies. Principle 2 is to approach the work with humility. The work of developing and implementing race equity strategies, or equity strategies in general, in research, evaluation, and CQI must be approached with humility. The work you are doing is very complex, and you should give yourself and your team members grace throughout the process. Principle 3 is to include community representation. Research, evaluation, and CQI activities are most effective and influential when they meaningfully include representatives from the communities that stand to be most impacted by the work. Number 4 is to engage lived experts. Individuals with lived expertise must be engaged throughout the life cycle of any research, evaluation, or CQI effort. What that involvement looks like may vary and should be customized to suit the context and preferences of the individuals involved in specific projects. Later in the presentation, we will talk further about the importance of a subject matter expert, or SME. Principle 5 is to value diverse experience on project teams. Individuals do not need to be trained researchers, evaluators, or CQI professionals to be valuable members of project teams and decision-making entities within jurisdictions. Principle 6 is to examine internal biases. Leaders, decision makers, and project team members must intentionally and continually examine their own internal biases and how those impact their behaviors, relationships, and decisions. Doing these two principles can be a continuous check-in process with your team, filled with training or just dialogue, so all can fully participate with transparency without hesitation and assumptions made on anyone's behalf. Lastly, we have Principles 7 and 8. Principle 7 is to make sure efforts are trauma-informed. Research, evaluation, and CQI efforts must be trauma-informed, such that any associated activities do not exacerbate or cause further harm to communities that have historically been marginalized and disenfranchised. Number 8 is to meet jurisdictions where they are. Advancing equity is a developmental process, and jurisdictions are at different places on the equity continuum. It is important to achieve the balance of addressing inequities with the urgency that is required while meeting jurisdictions where they are developmentally. Everyone on the team may have different familiarity or engagement with DEI, the CQI process, or leadership. Create a space where there's accountability, trust, and growth, so everyone in the team and ultimately your CQI project all have positive outcomes or draw positive outlooks on their experience. Once you've gone through these considerations, it's time to ready your team. You'll identify team members, and different roles will have different responsibilities. You'll designate a team working time, as having an established time to meet will ensure that all members can plan ahead. Likewise, a working timeline keeps phases of the CQI process and deadlines visible. Take time for team building. Get to know your team members. And not only is it great to get to know them, but it improves team member accountability. You also want to create safety for your team members, such as collaborating on drafting a set of working agreements or community agreements. And you might be wondering, how do we have this conversation on creating community agreements? Well, we have some tips for opening the conversation on creating safety. Now, these are potential community agreements that could make your team's group agreements or guide the conversation to creating agreements. We also have a resource attached to help guide the conversation as well. Some of these example community agreements are: everyone has their own life experience. Want you to bring yours to the room. There are no right or wrong answers or ways to think. Nobody knows everything. Everyone in this room is human. Nobody is perfect. Come prepared to share and learn. Speak your truth. Let others speak theirs. And respect everyone in their time. Ultimately, for your group agreement, you want to ask your team the question: what do you need to feel comfortable participating in this CQI process? Supporting your CQI team. You want to establish equity as a grounding principle. Equity as a grounding principle looks like deliberate and accessible methods for people to participate meaningfully in the work who would otherwise be excluded, such as those from historically marginalized groups or those not in traditional leadership roles. This is also results that are significant to the community affected. Equity and support also means checking in with each team member so they all have a voice in the work and feel like they're being heard. Using strategies such as the guiding principles we talked about earlier and those listed below on the slide can keep your team feeling supported and also forming a team that can produce impactful results. You also want to be clear about the expectations and roles they will play. We'll talk about roles later on, but also considering some of the key considerations we discussed earlier, such as the time commitment or what the work expectations are, such as attendance and work outside of the meetings. We also want to emphasize that all parts of the CQI process and participation are voluntary. Keeping things transparent and open will allow you to build that support even at the beginning of your process. You want to acknowledge power and privilege imbalances. Power and privilege differences can come inherently from the structure of your agency, but power and privilege also involves thinking about the identities that we hold, both visible and invisible, that affect the way we relate to the world and our experiences growing up. Acknowledging these things at the beginning of the conversation will allow folks with identities that have historically been marginalized to feel heard and seen within the work and allow them to have these conversations that are difficult with the team. You also want to provide support and appreciation for their participation. Now, support does not need to be monetary. Some examples of the support could be availability. So thinking about asking their team members when they're free and scheduling your meetings during their free time. It could also be using accessible meeting locations, such as moving to a virtual or Zoom platform if folks have childcare issues or are just commuting from a long distance from the in-person location. You could also offer letters of recommendation for those who want to pursue job opportunities or higher education and show what they've achieved within your team. In providing support and appreciation, this can be a feedback loop with the members on your team. You can ask them what they need to participate or what barriers might get in the way of participation. With their responses, you can have a conversation on what your program can or can't do and integrate possible solutions together. Now we'll be discussing the roles on the CQI team. And there are 6 main roles. You have a sponsor, a champion, the facilitator, a subject matter expert, or someone with lived experience, also known as an SME, a meeting scribe, and a data liaison. It is important to note that one person can have multiple roles on your team. For example, your facilitator could also be the meeting scribe. People can also have the same role. You might have two champions, for example, or two people who could be subject matter experts. Ultimately, you are the expert, and you will structure your team in whatever best fits your logistics and resources. We'll now discuss the expectations by role. The sponsor is the agency-level leadership. They set aside time for the team to work, offer support, and build outside relationships to move the project forward. The champion encourages participation in the CQI process. They'll attend trainings, decide how to distribute information, foster new ideas from team members, and inform all parties involved of efforts and achievements. The facilitator is responsible for preparing the meeting agendas and keeping all meetings on track. They'll be responsible for checking that all members participate and know the status of complete, ongoing, and future tasks. The subject matter expert, or someone with lived experience, will be the expert on the issue the team is working to improve. They'll help address the issue based on their expertise. The meeting scribe is another name for a note taker, and they'll be responsible for taking notes at each meeting and distributing and sharing meeting notes with all team members. Last but not least, there's a data liaison. They'll be responsible for gathering data for the project, verifies the quality of the data, and analyzes all data for the team. They'll also certify interpretations made based on the data are correct. Now you might be looking at the subject matter expert and wonder, who can be a subject matter expert? And the answer to that question is anyone can, depending on your CQI topic. For example, if you're working on increasing home visiting completion rates, one of your home visitors could be an expert because they're the ones with the feet on the ground and meeting with families. Also, if you're addressing enrollment and retention, a prior parent could be in this role. They could share things that encourage them to enroll and things that might have impeded them staying with the program. We also want to talk about the importance of a subject matter expert or someone with lived experience on your CQI team. Their importance comes from partnering, and this partnering can co-create solutions that accelerates improvements and outcomes and center the work in health equity. Subject matter experts can also provide information that you may not be able to know otherwise. Using the example of home visiting completion rates, for example, if you have a home visitor, they might be able to share that the effects of illness on keeping home visits scheduled, or the impact of the commute on how many families they can see each day. Finally, we'll discuss the potential benefits of having a SME on your team. The subject matter expert can gain increased self-efficacy, leadership, and empowerment skills through their collaborative efforts on the CQI team. If you see the visual on the right, HV Coin has a parent caregiver toolkit to build leadership skills if they're on your CQI team. This can be a great tool to share with your parent or caregiver if they are your subject matter expert on your team. Likewise, including a subject matter expert can increase innovation in methods, demonstrate the prioritization of families, expand the capacity and impact of the work, and lead to greater community representation. It is important to reiterate that this can only be achieved when properly doing all steps of the CQI process. And this is only the beginning, but you're on your way. If you're a fan of the whiz like I am, it's time to ease on down the road of the continuous quality improvement process. Thank you for listening.